And that was a horrible joke, but it's just funny because the irony. It's where Alice in Wonderland, she falls down a hole, and what happens in Wonderland is so crazy, but the irony is that the first thing she sees and has to question is a goddamn rabbit looking at a watch thinking it's late. So that's the irony, is that that's not explained off the bat, and that anything that proclaims after that is anything less. Whereas it's so over the top that the irony of the white rabbit initiating that he's trying to be on time is just over the top, but doesn't even get accounted for properly because of the immediate harmonics that would start propagating afterwards are just so outrageous that the irony that we would be concerned if the white rabbit is on time or not throughout the duration is the same thing as the joke where anything is more tasteful. So I could have picked anything up from the ground and said that this is more tasteful than talking about how prevalent picking candy up off from the ground could be induced into a transmission of something you wouldn't want. One thing I'm sad about the kids is that throwing candy on the ground isn't cool anymore. When you're doing fairs, and at fairs they would throw candy on the ground and you would pick it up and get all hyped, but nowadays stuff on the ground is known to be as dangerous as HIV. Read this and it might be more tasteful. That's just a joke because anything's more tasteful than talking about a STD. There is a police light that I saw at the start of the day and I was trying to show it inside my rear view mirror and I couldn't really capture it. But similarly, there's a light that's behind a blind, and then instead of the edge of a rear view mirror, the blind is putting the same effect but in a different discord. It's just how mirroring can also invoke an edge if the mirror is cut from being seen any further if you walk one way too far. In any case, this oddly resembles a harmonic motion from the very start of the day to the very finish, when the sun was rising and now it's setting, but it's still having the same light scheme that is right behind me. Once again, I want to document how similar this light is compared to a police light that was in distance as I'm driving away, because there's all the wetness all around it from the rain that was coming down, equivalent to just how prolific the fabric is on the tent that's covering up the lights from exposing from the crack within it, especially since it's on an absolute value which is ranging from 2 rays outwards on a specific angle that you could read with a compass if you were to measure one at the top of the marking of the triangle on the tent's crack seam opening. But the glass was perforated. Can this flower breathe if it's underwater? Is this a real flower? And if so, it's like wearing a snorkel because its tips have the glitter on it. So just as I walked out with the store's property and I accidentally took their book that had the pricing of the ticket in it, the pricing book ticket in it. If you find an object in the store, are you allowed to use it if it's in between you not knowing if you left it there, because it have resin on it and you can swirl it around like a when you're cooking and then you cut with a knife and it makes like a swirl when it isn't quite baked yet. Part of the excellent equivalence that you can show between them to have a definite answer of how different they actually are. And it just turned out after I said that, and that's kind of interesting. It's just I remember everywhere that I saw a fire, it's just how many times do you see a fire in the public? And so then I remember every time when I hear a voice on a recording, and this was one area that I did where there was no one else around me and I heard a voice. Characteristic of the identification of glowing is, and this is so much so that There was a guy in Japan, his name was Kamijo, and he was laying inside of rose petals, and then he was kind of sitting like this, and so I'm kind of doing an imitation of him. And so there's different things that are just, they tend to glow, and one characteristic is that if they are of the laser yellow highlighter color, a lot of them can be like any color except the watercolors are good for mimicking the laser yellow highlighter colors, because they would share a stark characteristic with the glowing trademark of the luciferase enzyme, which is found in glow sticks and fireflies' abdomens. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the second part of when the leaves start dehydrating, they all fall, and when they're falling down, they all fall down. It's a new canvas of stage of the tree burning, with all of it burning over a slow amount of time, as if when things are weathered inside of an inferno, they tend to fall apart. And that's just a second vector, totally separate from the dehydration of the color changing routine. If it was burning in plasma time. Moment where there's a nexus in it being enveloped downwards, as opposed to if it's catching light from being on top of the surface. How can this flower be? Or if you're being hurt when you shouldn't be. I can't tell you how scared I am of not having clean air, not having clean water. And now I've got a third thing with surface areas being dangerous. Why am I talking about how things are rounding and weathered? Or when something is weathered, it starts curling, and then you see the bottom of its surface area, and it can be on a plane that's kind of scary. But don't be scared of planes, even if they have things hidden in them. Over here, you might be blind. Excuse my friends. Over here, I don't have any friends. Over here is not an illusion of the camera, but it's glass twinkling because it's sharp. And the sharp edges of it are what allow the light to bounce off of it more specifically. Just as the cell lines of a crystalline structure of a flower's petal are unique because the light is acclimated on its surface from the edging, whereas the edging would occur from fine tuning from germinating from a seed and then outing a blossom, which I was calling earlier a dehydration process is how a blossom occurs. I'm sticking with it because when things are in heat flashes, everything's sucked in really hard and it pops out even harder, like a capsize, and moisture is usually left, even though it's really hot and things probably got cinched in ash. But when it does that, there's moisture and it's the opposite. So just as a blooming would be, you think it would be so nutrient and moist. I would think quite, because when popcorn pops, it's like a hot flash and out comes it, and it reminds me of when a popcorn kernel pops is like how a flower would ostensibly bloom after germination, just quicker. The smart decisions and accomplishments that people make in their life is as the difference between AI seeing you and doing stuff better than you could. If we're comparing in a similar vector the honey from pollination cycle to a water through a rain cloud or lake in the water cycle. How can a supercomputer be worth more than you if cognitively your IQ is not being utilized properly? The fine schematics of nature are nothing short of your body as it weathers. That's not bad to even know, especially if it's something as